Happy Sunday, Tampa Bay. We're with you for another week to talk about the local real estate market here in the Tampa Bay area. Got a full house today, lots of content to go over to talk to you about what's going on in real estate. Robert Johnson, president of the Duncan Duo team. I'm Andrew Duncan. We've got Mike Yates with Atlantic Bay Mortgage, and Ari from Ari's Roofing Services, ariesroofing.com is with us as well today, is Darcy Davis, a listing partner on our real estate team. And to start off today, we're going to talk, some conversation on Realtor.com. This is probably about a week or so ago. Talked about, are you ready to graduate from renting to owning a home? And I get the tie-in with graduation. It's kind of that time of year where people are graduating and going through that. And it's weird for me to have a soon-to-be 15-year-old having friends graduating from high school. It just seems like yesterday where she was like in kindergarten. So definitely that time of year. But a lot of people out there are still sitting on the sidelines waiting to buy, and so I wanted to start with you, Mike. Obviously we've seen some interest rate spikes in the last few weeks, but interest rates still at historic lows, prices rising, and now interest rates on the rise. What would you say to anyone out there that has been waiting to buy or kind of sitting on the sidelines?
Yeah, don't wait.
It's going to get more expensive.
Exactly. It's going to get more expensive. Appreciation's going up. Kind of the flip side of that, too, as well, that you guys know, I think in our area, the appreciation on rentals has been outrunning our appreciation on the housing market as well. So, if you continue to rent, your rent's likely going to continue to go up as well. And a lot of times, some people don't realize this, you can buy a comparable home usually for what you're paying in rent or less sometimes, and then it's yours. You're not paying somebody else's mortgage for them.
Another thing on that same token, so much of our rental market now is controlled by large hedge funds, corporate institutions, not just the individual investor anymore.
Right.
Even though individual investors still own a lot, we've had hedge funds come and buy up our inventory. Robert, you can probably remember this. It's like one of the heydays. Robert still celebrates selling like 57 homes in 1 month with the hedge fund. But no, it's true. Like back in the day, that's all they bought, right? I mean, they bought like crazy. That's all that was happening. Just half of the buyers were hedge funds.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, it did really well for our market. It sucked up a lot of the inventory. I know the markets that they were in across the country, they were buying for a reason. At the time, we kind of thought they were crazy. Now we look back and man, they got some great deals. And
they were really smart, and there's a reason they have lots and lots of analysts paying them 6 figures on payroll to figure out what to buy and what to buy.
Now rents have been going up, so that's helped them there. And then they created a rise in prices, which it started off, but now they haven't been buying for a few years. But
sure,
they didn't even love homes that needed work. I mean, they backed straight from the MLS, perfectly great homes.
They wanted a move-in ready turnkey that they could rent.
Yeah, we were able to help a lot of sellers at the time, and there's a lot of people that couldn't buy at the time that now are able to rent properties. But it was something.
Well, one of the things. So what that basically means for renters today is, so corporate institutions are different than the individual, Joe Schmo landlord that might feel a little bit of sympathy towards your situation, may not raise your rent, may accept a late payment here and there. May not aggressively rise rents on their properties as much. These are corporate institutions that have a system and a plan, and they know they can turn around and put tenants back in them, and they have plans in place to raise the rent every year. And your sob story to get rent lowered isn't going to work with them, and they control the market. So if they want to rise rents, they do it. And so many of these corporate institutional investors that own property rise the rents. I go to the Mr. Car Wash over on Gandy just about every Sunday. And there's a gentleman in there that talked to me about a problem he was having with his landlord, raising the rent on him. And a lot of those things can be tied back to who owns the market, And those analysts can do all the research and all the data, and they know, like, they can do this. They know they can get away with it, versus an individual landlord that might think, man, I don't really want to go a month without rent, so I'm going to keep it lower. The institutional investor knows how to do the math. They know the data. They know the market. They've hired, gobs and gobs of analysts. So, the rents are going to rise. So why keep paying that rising? If you have the ability to buy, why be at the mercy of that? You can lock your payment in and then really kind of know what's going on.
Right. And one thing, a lot of renters may feel like they can't afford to buy a house or they don't have any money to put down. But there are a lot of low money down options out there, 3% down options, 3.5% down options. But there's also some down payment assistance programs as well. So If you feel like you can't buy because you don't have that money to put down, still a good idea to speak with a lender to see if there's any options out there available.
And not only that, but you can also get, your family can loan you money
Right,
for the
yes.
down payment. You
Absolutely.
can get gift money, or not loan, but they
Right,
can gift
yes.
you money. There are definitely a lot of options out there. You can get closing cost assistance to help cover, or limit the amount of money out of pocket. And in addition to that, you get a lot of the financial benefits that you get as an owner that you don't get as a renter. And some of those have been tweaked a little bit, but for the majority of first-time home buyers out there, the tax changes are pretty irrelevant for them. But and you get the equity. I don't see anytime soon prices dropping. We know markets are cyclical. We know at some point it's going to happen, or prices are going to go back in the other direction. And as an investor that buys home, I can't wait for that moment. But the reality is, the other side of me that wants to help customers, it's not something you look for anytime soon. But nonetheless, with prices continuing to rise, you're basically you're helping your landlord add to their net worth, not really doing a whole lot for yourself. So it's and I think at the appreciation rate, some people would say things like, oh, well, I don't want to buy. We've seen millennials, for example, buying bigger homes, waiting longer, and then buying a bigger home because they didn't want to buy the starter home and then 2 years later outgrow it. So they've just kind of waited and skipped the whole starter home mentality. And so we've seen that be a trend. And the problem with that is that you're leaving that equity on the table when you go 2 years down the line to sell it and not have to pay taxes on the gain because you lived in it 2 out of the last 5 years. You're giving that equity away to someone else. And the response from some millennials is, well, wait a second, it's going to cost me, 8, 9, 10 percentage points to sell it 2 years down the line. But when appreciation is outpacing that, it's and considerably outpacing it in some areas, you're definitely still leaving money on the table. So nonetheless, definitely a great time to buy. Now, here's the key to it, though. If you are going to buy, if you are going to stop renting, it's a little bit more challenging. I know the rental market is tough to find rentals. I've had friends move into the area, move into other areas and have a hard time finding stuff. It's even harder on the buy side because of the lack of inventory. Homes are selling quickly. You got to offer really strong. You got to work with the right agent. You got to do some creative things to get your offer accepted. So if you are going to go to owning a home, do your research. Talk to a good lender and get qualified right up front, right, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. If our market is crazy right now with multiple offers and low inventory. If you don't have that qualification letter, you're wasting your time, really, especially in a multiple offer situation. By the time you have a chance to speak with a lender, that house might be gone, and it happens all the time.
Yeah, and I think on our own listings, Robert, you can speak to this too. I mean, if we list a good property in a above average to middle, to below average, even higher end homes are still getting bidding wars and selling super fast. And people think that it's limited to that's only happening to $100,000 homes. It's happening across the board.
No, and actually we were just commenting yesterday that we're seeing it on much higher priced homes. We went for a while where our market had a lot of inventory kind of in the move up range, what you were talking about, the 400 to 600 range. And we might still have a higher amount of inventory in that area, but when you list a good home, it still gets multiple offers.
And part of the reason for that, and sometimes people kind of forget this, but real estate is very cyclical, and it's kind of a domino effect. So if we had a lot of $200,000 or $300,000 inventory earlier in the year, and it was getting bidding wars and selling fast, well, what ends up happening when all those people sell their $200,000 and $300,000 homes to first-time home buyers, they're moving up and buying a $500,000 home. So it just takes a little bit longer to climb the price charts where you have the inventory shortages. When we analyzed the data for the stats a couple weeks ago, we saw that the inventory was starting to shrink in the 600, 700, 800,000 range, whereas before it was kind of ballooned up, and that's really the reality behind it. People that sold their 200s are now out. And now there's a bunch of them with little inventory, on that as well. So pretty much across the board. Now look, if you're selling a $3 million house, don't expect it on that. That's a whole other ballgame. We don't have that happening here. We're not San Fran, where a $3 million house will get a big war and sell in 4 days. I can't say it never happens, but the days on market stats and averages, above $1 million. Aren't necessarily on par with a lot of the stats that we're talking about, but it has climbed up. You are seeing it more in 600 and 700 and that you didn't see that 6 months and a year ago. So if you're thinking about